People have cut up Crossfire Hurricane in a lot of different ways and used a lot of different analogies to try to explain this. The first one being the name of the operation itself, Crossfire Hurricane, which is more of a combination of a weather storm and a shooting gallery.
Jumpin' Jack Flash was running through my mind. And one of the lyrics, Mick Jagger kind of swaggering and saying, I was born in a crossfire hurricane.
You can't look at it in the form of a chess game in the sense that the spy business is a chess game, espionage is a chess game. You don't reveal all your future moves to your opponent. You wait to watch what your opponent is going to do, to see if your opponent takes the lures that you offer them, that you're trying to entrap them, and so forth. Peter Strzok's father, senior, was a longtime CIA employee all over Africa, all over the Middle East, helped engineer overthrows in the Middle East. Peter Strzok was living in Tehran, going to Tehran High School during the overthrow of the Shah. He grew up speaking Farsi, and he has been intimately connected with things that were critical, most significantly the Iran nuclear deal. That was a $150 billion payday on day one. And what people forget is there was two more $150 billion paydays that were scheduled in the deal that Trump canceled. Okay, so there's your motive. And the means of this was Crossfire Hurricane.
July 21st, 2016, summer before the election. Trump is a disaster. And then 1 week later, you open that Crossfire Hurricane investigation. I mean, it just looks like you saw a way to stop Donald Trump from becoming president of the United States.
We've been painted this picture that they're lovers and they just hate Trump. And these two rogue agents decided to run a Crossfire Hurricane with long-term CIA and FBI informants.
An understanding that we needed to do a broader counterintelligence look. And Director Mueller, speaking with him, speaking with his senior team, as well as back at the FBI with Acting Director McCabe, we all had agreed that the FBI personnel on his team that I was leading, that we would do that counterintelligence look, which would include that into the president. Now, that's a really, really difficult thing to do. And I was struggling up until the day I left to try and figure out how to do it. Because if you think about it, that's a massive undertaking.
No, it didn't start because Trump said, Russia, if you're out there, publish Hillary's emails.
I mean, look, I recruited people to work for the United States for over 20 years. I worked against those who were trying to recruit those within the U.S. And there are a ton of motivations. I mean, the big categories are those of money, ideology, coercion, or ego.
Strzok identified 4 suspects in the Trump campaign: Papadopoulos, Carter Page, Paul Manafort, and Michael Flynn.
We now know that Brennan had a task force to investigate Trump long before, into 2015, and basically it was just a change in the guard. Brennan was just getting over the operatives and intelligence that he had compiled over to Strzok to continue on. The CIA informants just melded into the FBI informants into one document, the Trump dossier.
What is up, folks? Eddie Eds here, Anakin Skywalker, and I'm here with George Webb, investigative journalist and reporter, the famous George Webb. And George and I are broadcasting this afternoon and this morning at noon on the East Coast time and morning for everyone else behind us. How are you doing today, George? A little better today than yesterday. Tough week with everything that's going on, and there's some new excitement on the battleground of the judiciary battleground that we have to discuss today as well. So how are you doing, sir?
I'm great, Eddie. And so
I was a little bit frustrated, 1 week, first of all, 6 weeks we had into preparing the ground, telling everybody it's going to be Cobo Hall. I didn't know it was TCF Center at that time. Talking about the Ferraris, talking about Warren Flood's picture on the wall saying it's TCF, that's the headquarters, whole 5-state operation. And then a week, we're waiting for a lawsuit finally to be filed. And then it's not from Trump. It comes out from this law center. And the law center, the Great Lakes Law Center, did a great job with the law, quoting the law. But you can't just quote law. You have to quote the affidavits. The law without the affidavits is like giving the judge a law book. They go, okay, that's all Michigan election law. You got all that right. Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State, already knows this. She was a part of putting it all through. So there's no argument here. You guys quoted the law. You have to have the proof. Right? You have to have the affidavits. That's why you were down there, Eddie. That's why the Channel 7 guys were hiding in their van, and you were out there getting affidavits. And I was very frustrated that we spent all this 6 weeks preparation, and we built out the news center and the thousands of dozens, the tens of thousands that Aaron Adler spent to create a safe place, right? And that there was no Trump lawsuit. Well, as soon as there she is, Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State. As soon as I basically get done airing my frustrations on Twitter, guess what? In comes a Trump lawsuit with all the affidavits. And I don't know if we prompted that by just complaining and having to shame Rudy Giuliani or whatever happened, but they did, and it's so easy. Social media affidavits are so easy. You just immediately write all the stuff down that they say in social media, and then you send them an email saying, did you say this? And then will you swear to that you made this comment on such and such a day? So it's the easiest thing in the book, and there was people who had compiled all these affidavits, all these testimonies together. So it was the easiest thing in the world. So I couldn't understand why they didn't do it. Well, they finally did it just in time for me to look bad, getting finally frustrated. But anyway, the good news is whatever I got mad about yesterday, late in the afternoon or early in the afternoon, is immaterial. The fact is that Trump finally has filed a good lawsuit with a lot of affidavits, like dozens of affidavits. And please, now that you're public out there, come to the news hour and tell your story publicly. If you remember, sorry, Addie, I'm going on a bit, but
No, go ahead, George.
Al Gore thought he was president for 37 days. Al Gore thought he was president for 37 days. Joe Biden's only 7 days into thinking he's president, or 8 days into thinking he's president. So there is precedent here, as John O'Loughlin has told us. Don't give me your argument, give me precedent in a court of law. So we finally have the case that we are putting together, and there's no reason sending you down there to get your head beat in to grab all these affidavits if they're not going to be used. So I want to say thank you again, Addie, for being the guy down there when no one else would go down there, and getting those critical affidavits. So hats off to you.
Oh, thanks, George. I mean, I wouldn't know where to direct my my fire if it weren't for you. So, yeah, appreciate that, because I'm still I'm rereading your material and still learning. It's so dense. There's a lot to unpack there, but that's why George is still here and rocking on the airwaves, and more over.
Thank you, True North Law. Thank you for putting together the affidavits. Gateway pundit Cassandra Fairbanks had an article out finally early this morning, and I'm watching The Wire. And if you want to see the filing against Jocelyn Benson, very beautifully written. You have to have, it's better when you sue on behalf of the injured party, Donald Trump, Mike Pence, So that's the key here. And then you see Jocelyn Benson's name there. And then if you want to just, I don't want to dox all the people that are filled out affidavits, but I do want to show you it is in the dozens. Okay.
Okay.
These are all affidavits.
Okay.
So each
If
one
you
of
text
these.
that link to me, George, I can pull it up.
Well, I don't know if I want to show it just quickly so I don't dox all the, this is public information,
Sure.
but I don't want these
Sure.
people to be intimidated. But I'll text these to you. Yeah, you can put them up. Yeah, it's in the lawsuit, so there's no hiding it. But anyway, that's the good news here. And I'm just very happy this morning.
So you first
Took a
heard
while.
about it on Gateway Pundit?
I first saw the filing on in Cassandra Fairbanks' article this morning at 7:42 a.m., which was 5 o'clock our time here. But hey, better late than never, as they say. It is a little frustrating. I got to be the first one to tell you how long we waited, but it doesn't matter now because we have liftoff finally. So. I apologize to anyone who thought I was losing the faith, but I was losing patience. I'll be the first to say, because we're there 5 weeks ahead of time, 6 weeks ahead of time. And, we got Dave down under, talking about the upholstery pattern that the Bank of the Vatican Bank financed in the Ferrari, in the Walgreens Ferrari. With Boots Alliance. So, I mean, this is how far in detail we had this thing worked out before it happened. Obviously, the Pacina's didn't probably drive the Ferrari down there, or Gilbert didn't drive the Ferrari, or Illich didn't drive the Ferrari. It was probably Warren Flood, because Warren Flood's job was to win Michigan, if nothing else. So I just was very frustrated with Giuliani being on the edge of the tree, working on the branches of the tree when we had the root of what was going on at the TCF. And this new lawsuit is beautifully written, and it goes right to the TCF. Everything's about the TCF. So finally, we're on the money here.
Excellent. It's great news, George. I actually didn't even see that, so I'm gonna definitely read the article, check it out. And it's Cassandra Fairbanks, Gateway Pundit, and Jocelyn Benson. That was the name I couldn't remember the other day when I saw that. I think Trump had filed on the 4th, Secretary of State of Michigan, former dean of Wayne State University Law School in Detroit as well. So that's quite interesting there. Before we go into more deeper into current events, we got a couple of questions about the 2000 election. George, did Gore, as far as you know, take money to step down? There was also someone else who said that Gore got silver or lead, which I thought was kind of funny wordplay there. But here it is. It's from ECAP. Pachenik said that Gore took $50 million to step down in 2000. What do you think?
Oh, I don't know anything about that. Anything that Steve Pachenik, who is the mouthpiece of Henry Kissinger, says, I don't put a whole lot of weight in. I think Henry Kissinger is how we got into this mess with drugs in all of our major cities, and it's a bad story with drugs going in one direction, weapons in the other, and that's. I see people asking, can Trump still win? And people don't seem to understand that when the buzzer rings, I said this yesterday ad nauseum, that's the end of the game. So that whatever the scoreboard says at the end of the game is the end of the game. If you send everybody home, and this is exactly what the affidavits say, and saying the polling place is closed, and these are affidavits from people saying they were locked out, and then you start the game up again, saying there's an overtime. You can't lock out the other players. When the other players see you in there shooting and the scoreboard changing, and then they're banging on the windows trying to get back in to play the game, if the poll was reopened, you can't lock them out. This is an airtight case. This will fail in the Michigan Supreme Court. filed in the Western District of Michigan. The Lansing, I believe, or Ann Arbor, I think, is the venue. United States District Court. So it's filed in federal court. This will fail, I believe, in Michigan, but then it will go to the Supreme Court, which is exactly the same thing that what happened in Bush v. Gore. It was filed in federal court in Florida. It was lost, I believe, by George Bush. And the Gore decision was upheld, and then it was appealed by James Baker, if you remember, and went to the Supreme Court, where the Gore won a 5-4 decision. No hanging chads here, as Charles Heald says, but there was hanging challengers. They were left hanging outside. So in the 2000 election, maybe before you were born, Addie, I can't even remember now. No, you were 5 years old. There was hanging chads, little pieces of paper that were hanging because they used industrial machines to punch thousands of ballots at a time, and it didn't completely punch out all the paper areas in ballots. But this one, there's hanging chads, but the chads are real people. They're guys named Chad. So we have chads hanging outside and chadesses. So I think we do have
Stacy's, they're called.
Stacy's. Yeah, we have Stacy's. So in a very real way, a better case. In a very real way, this is a better case than Bush v. Gore, because you had to make a call about the hanging chads, and you had to say, well, these look like they were machined, right? And, in the thousands. But this one, you actually have people outside, like, Mrs. Robinson. It's a very famous movie called The Graduate with Before You Were Born Again, with Dustin Hoffman, where he's banging on the window saying, this is my girlfriend. You can't marry her. This is the same thing we had. We had all the Dustin Hoffman banging on the window.
Yeah. And we had a comment here about what was it? No hanging chads, of course, and of course McDuff checking in as well. Chads are human too. Chad's life matters. I'll put the entropy link in the live chat once again. But Kissinger will speak at Bloomberg Economic Forum November 16th to the 19th of this year, according to Sharon Davis. He's like the final boss, isn't he? Kissinger. He's like, right when you got, you think you beat the boss, and you go to the deeper into the depths of the dungeon and the basement, and there's Kissinger, and he's like sitting by a fire. There's a very elaborate mahogany shelved library. There's a $10,000 chessboard, and he's got like his protege hiding in the corner, unbeknownst to all of us. So this is the guy, right, George? This is he seems to be, still a big time player, even though people think that he's getting too old. Paul Cottrell for president 2024, by the way.
Well, if you remember, we anticipated this with interviewing Paul Cottrell multiple times on the NewsHour, multiple times on his channel, because he went to Wayne State University. He told the whole story about Michigan corruption. So this was why I was a little bit, and say hi to John. I see John's in the chat. This is why I was a little bit frustrated yesterday, because, we've been months saying this is going to be the epicenter. The operation's going to happen here. It's not going to be Chicago this time. But as far as Kissinger being the big guy, I definitely think Kissinger is the big guy. He goes all the way back to Allen Dulles and setting up this LOL plan with his drugs and these. If you remember where I start out my whole series 4 years ago, we start right in Michigan. We start right in Detroit, Muzaffar Awan and the pain clinics and the whole soft targeting of all the young people with these fentanyl overdoses. So, and then I had an informant, Deep Finance, who's kind of gone through maybe someone's impersonating her now, but she was saying it was all John Conyers, 40 years laundering all the money, the drug money from Detroit in the DNC, into the DNC, straight into the DNC for the chosen ones. These aren't the chosen ones of YouTube. These are the chosen ones of Nancy Pelosi. Who gets the encrypted BlackBerry?
Yeah, and so far I'm still chosen to have my channel still be on the YouTube airways, which is something I'm grateful for. And we just saw a couple days ago Ann Vandersteel lost her channel, which I was surprised to find out it was actually the first time. For some reason I thought that she had lost a prior YouTube channel, but we are actually speaking with the lovely Miss Vandersteel this evening at around 10 Eastern. She gets off at I think 10 is when she gets live streaming. And we want to give a shout out to McDuff, who's also on tonight at his usual 8 o'clock slot. So yeah, I just wanted to do a promo for this evening as well, folks, and pray my channel lasts a little longer.
Well, and I did a promo this morning, 3 minutes, just of our first show with Ann that we did in the newsroom the night before the election night. And we had, if you remember, we had Ann in Nevada, we had Florida, we had several people, Chip and others. We had Tracy in Pennsylvania, we had Peter out in California, you know, in the Dark Star out there. We really had it covered. We had Ohio covered. We had Toledo covered with Mark Buckley. We had obviously Dave from up there who had told us all about Cobo Hall and all the, you know, the Ferrari Club.
There's a Susie Marie comment
really
right on time.
That
Dave.
coverage was just awesome. What's that?
Oh, I lost you there for a second, George.
Can
you hear me okay? I was just saying that we got that Sault Ste. Marie comment right as you mentioned Dave Underdown. I thought that was great.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we nailed it. We didn't miss it by a half an inch on, you know, as far as being exactly correct about where this was going to be. And Ann will be interesting because she's been shut down now, as we created the Neighborhood News Hour for a place of refuge for people who were deplatformed. Me twice. And then we got deplatformed, so we had to rebuild from the ashes again. But yeah, I'm going to be on McDuff's tonight at 8 o'clock with the trio. I see McDuff's comment there. I did a promo about McDuff this morning as the original citizen journalist. And then also my deceased partner, who just profiles in citizen journalism, I guess would be what I would call it. Yeah, I think we're nailing it. We're for what our budget is, for the kind of content and accuracy we're bringing to people. I think people are really getting their money's worth, whether it's $2 on Patreon or $3, or if you're a VIP, $15. Or just however you decide to help Addie or me or John, Mark Kulak, all these great journalists. This is how we're getting the job done. And we're winning. We're winning. Our journalism's better. Journalism is too important to be fake.
Yeah, it's the truth. That's the way it should be about. But you mentioned the Michigan, case, which is, you say it's going to be in Lansing before it goes to the Supreme Court. You anticipate?
Yeah, we'll be able to cover that. I realize Lansing's not exactly where we are, but
yeah, we're in the same state though, so that's good. And what are the dates on that, George? Do we know?
Well, we haven't got a hearing date yet, and a lot of these things are done what they call in camera, which is the initial filings and so forth, and pleadings and all that are done just in judges' chambers for this procedural type stuff.
Of course.
But then, thank you, Gary. I appreciate the Patreon. But this is fine. Not anecdotal evidence, not hearsay evidence. I looked at all the initial Rudy lawsuits, and it was like he was trying to do another Barat. Dude, right in the middle of the most important period of time, you're going on Barat with the little girl on the bed, right in the middle of the most important time last year with Trump and phone call. You're deciding to go see Kolomoisky through two guys on the the mobster mile from down in Boca Raton? Why are you consorting with two guys that have had 20-year history in fraud and Ukrainian weapons sales? Why do those have to be your intermediaries to go see a Ukrainian billionaire crook? Kolomoisky, what the hell are you doing? Right? You're supposed to be on Trump's team. You're not supposed to be make Trump look bad by, sort of like giving somebody your car to park and then they hit every Maserati and Ferrari in the parking lot on the way to going to their VIP parking spot. It's like, we don't need your help if you're thinking you're helping. So I don't know if we shamed him yesterday into filing affidavits or not, but we were within a hair's breadth of saying, screw it, if you're going to have this kind of incompetence, we're done. Yeah, he caught a lot of mobsters in New York, but they were the ones Mark Rich wanted thrown out so that Mossad could partner with the Genoveses. So what happened to the Genoveses? They're still running the show. So I'm tired of this stuff with Rudy Giuliani, and I'm going to call him out every time he F's up, and he F's up a lot. And thank God we were there holding their feet to the fire is all I can say, because that first Grand Rapids lawsuit, which came out only 2 days ago, immediately looked at it and said, great law, but shitty affidavits. And then we said shitty affidavits, and boom, in came True North Law with all the affidavits. Really very simple. All you have to do is just watch all the videos and then just send emails to the people doing the videos saying, you swear and attest that these statements are true. But anyway, having said that, somebody did it. And you have to sue on behalf of the president, the injured party. Amicus briefs are the only thing we can do if we're not representing the president. So having a dunce in the driver's seat for Trump is not good. We can't take the place of the dunce. We can't say, we're throwing you out of the Ferrari, Rudy, and we're going to drive now. You hit every car in the parking lot, right? We can't do that. We have to wait for Trump to realize that Rudy's an idiot.
So there is a amicus curiae, someone who's not party to a case who assists a court by offering information, expertise, or insight. Literally, friend of the court. And you mentioned Rudy Giuliani and the Borat thing. That's one thing I don't understand. Can you explain that, George? Because I can't think of an explanation for what happened there with the girl and it was like a movie, right? It was like a movie scene or something.
Yeah, it's a big #1. It's the sequel to the first movie, and he's in there acting like he's molesting a young girl, and just this isn't the type of publicity that you need when you're arguing the case for the president, right? And who I mean, why would you even say yes to something like that in the first place? But anyway, let's just say he's just stupid. Which, okay, he should come out and say, I'm incapable of prosecuting this thing. I don't know what an affidavit is. I'm not the person to move the president's case forward. I'm stepping down. But you compound it by staying in the driver's seat. You got to get him out of the driver's seat. You got to pull him out of the Ferrari and put somebody in there who knows what the hell they're doing. We need a McDuff. We need a McDuff type of character, parking the Ferrari.
Yeah, that makes sense. Giuliani, I just don't fully understand him. He seems like he's for the good guys, but then it also seems like he's completely dispensable just because of things like that, the movie thing, and it just makes you question the whole thing, and maybe it's just, for that very reason, for just increasing that cloak and dagger ability that, the deep state has. But Major Prather's mentioned the kind of arrogance of them, and, I've talked about it too, how they'll just, go to the very last to defend their, the grip they have, the power grip they have over society.
Yeah, I mean, they call it a limited hangout where you get somebody who, Trump remembers. Yeah, Trump with Giuliani and drag. Yeah, I mean, you got to remember that these people, like Mark Rich, know that, hey, we'll do this for a fundraiser for cancer over here, and then you take the film of you dressing up in a dress with Rudy, and then we'll replay that right at the time that you're going in front of the Supreme Court. So these folks are good at that. I'm not saying they're not good at it. I'm just saying at these critical times, you have to go, hey, wait a minute. I got the wrong quarterback in here. We got to get somebody in here who knows what they're doing. And if you read this new lawsuit, and again, I give credit to Cassandra Fairbanks this morning for pushing it out there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known about it at 5:42 in the morning. But if you see the dozens and dozens of the affidavits, this is way thicker in terms of evidence than Bush v. Gore. And the law and the points of law that the state are far more behind each point of law. So each infraction of the law. So this is this is good.
Yeah. Giuliani, though, I don't fully understand him. I love the comment here, though, from who was that? I missed the comment. It was get in here, no interns. Oh, here we go. Imran, get in here, no staff. All caps.
Yeah.
Gotta love it. Love it.
People said I was being. Oh, there's the great Aaron Adler.
Aaron Adler has joined the studio this afternoon.
The man who poured tens of thousands
like this tonight. If I show up like this tonight, kick me out with the beautiful and lovely Ann Vandersteel. If I'm not shaved and just whatever, just kick me right out, okay? You too, maybe. You might need to shave. Do I get to have a little fun? 30 seconds of fun before?
Sure.
So, George, now that we have a real lawsuit out of the TCF and everything, your whole McSorley and Gretzky metaphor, I think we're going to need to change this to Iserman and Probert. I don't know if everybody out there remembers Iserman and Probert. This is a shout out to Dave Underdown. This before your time, but the Detroit version of Gretzky and McSorley would have been Iserman and Probert, or maybe later on Cicerelli would have been another one. But you as a basketball guy, we also have Bill Laimbeer. I can imagine you as a young man must have loved Bill Laimbeer. No,
unfortunately, a lot of people compared me to Bill Laimbeer and even said I looked like him and stuff. I was a little bit of an enforcer. But someone's asking, so I'm going to change the subject a little bit.
Okay.
Did George submit his amicus brief? And I didn't to the Great Lakes version because they just quoted law. And what I had said was, the reason Addie's down there running around at the TCF is to get affidavits, right? To get these people to tell their stories, get affidavits. And a lot of people went down there, and a lot of people did respond to our calls to go to the TCF Center. Aaron was saying at the very morning of the next day of the election, while I was still on the plane, I watched Aaron Adler say, we got to get to the TCF. He was standing out where Addie and I, where we had our place in Lake Erie. I mean, at 6 a.m. in the morning, I'm watching this thing on the plane saying we got to get to the TCF. So Aaron knew immediately. Dave Underdown knew immediately. Addie knew immediately. We made the call. Go to the TCF. We got all these people to get out there and do their stories, right? So it was a social media bonanza, right? All someone had to do was collate it all, which other channels did. And then all a law firm had to do is literally write them down, the collated channels. So that's what happened. And why that didn't happen earlier, I'm not going to go back in time, but it did happen finally. And I'm not going to file an amicus brief where we don't have the affidavits. I said from the beginning, I want to see what the Trump team puts down. I don't want to undermine the Trump team. And then we'll come back in with the intelligence connection of Warren Flood. We'll come back in with all these other connections. in our amicus brief, and there's dozens and dozens of affidavits. So we have to go through all those before we can file an amicus. Is the short answer.
Sorry to bomb the chat with my Detroit sports metaphors. Everybody got into that now and got us off track. But I have heard actually 237 specifically affidavits at Wayne County have been submitted with the Wayne County, clerk or clerk of courts. Maybe I don't know exactly who you would submit them to, but I heard 237 was an exact number that a friend in our chat had mentioned. I guess in terms of who you submit the affidavit to, affidavit really is just like a testimony, a fancy word for a testimony. And you can submit it to anyone, right? There's no like exact science of who you submit an affidavit to.
Oh yeah, there is.
There is.
The
okay.
affidavit are part of a pleading, and you sign a complaint, and then you say these laws were broken, and then you here's the tort that was committed against my client, and then here's the proof, here's the evidence. The affidavit's your evidence, right? So like I said, every social media thing that we generated becomes an affidavit, right? Sorry, I got the Peter Struck with the Bell helicopter going by. I interviewed a Navy guy, 30-year Navy guy, helicopter guy last night, and we talked about helicopters for 3 hours. So it's interesting. One flies by.
Well, yeah, don't quote me. I think then it would be 237 at Wayne County Circuit Court. Maybe someone can verify that. I've definitely seen 237 floated for Wayne County Circuit Court for affidavits of impropriety or just
Well, that's a good number. That's a good number because the Trump lawsuit, I don't think had 237. I think it had like 24, 25, and we could file an amicus literally transferring the names from the Wayne County and just add them over to the Trump lawsuit. That our amicus brief may be that simple. The reason for the amicus brief is to make the judge aware of evidence that the court may not be aware of. The principal actors that are supposed to present the evidence, both for and against, are the plaintiffs and the defendants, right? But there are cases in where the number of parties harmed is so great. In election, every party, every resident and voter in the state of Michigan is harmed, that the amicus brief really comes into play. If you remember in the Pittsburgh lawsuit or in the Pennsylvania lawsuit that Rudy did, and again, I see Rudy is almost deliberately doing misdirection. He has 10 attorneys general, state attorneys general, do an amicus brief in that case. But again, he's not at it's sort of like, Rommel, like Addie likes to quote Rommel or Patton, right? That's where the decisions are being made about where the tanks go, folks. Not out in the Kasserine Pass, right? It's up there at the command post is where Patton is saying, I read your book, Rommel, right? That's where the decisions are made. So anything that moves the nexus of attention outside of that TCF center is misplaced. Anything that moves the center of attention away from Warren Flood is misplaced. Anything that moves your attention away from 345 when the operation was launched with the red Ferrari is misplaced. And that's the trouble I had with Rudy is just constantly in the weeds. And he didn't bring any of the state's attorneys general into an amicus brief in Michigan. Why not? Clearly, Michigan election law was broken. If you had 10 other states attorney generals saying, hey, I reviewed this case and this is a disaster. This is Bush v. Gore times 1,000. There's 1,000 real Chads. These aren't hanging Chads. There's 1,000 real Chads that were harmed here. And so that was my frustration. It still is my frustration with Rudy.
I want to say before I forget, I'm going to intentionally, play spoiler here a little tonight just to help prepare you maybe. Our friend Dr. Hamamoto on his Patreon, a great Patreon page that I get great information from daily. He is really pumping a civil rights track to this. That like this is, just conceiving. I mean, really, I guess in a legal sense, it's about how you look at it, right? A lot of it's perspective and the track you come at it from. And he's really pumping the civil rights violation track. So I'm doing that now intentionally, just say what you think about it initially. And, tonight, I think Dr. Hamamoto may also ask you about that, George. So through the day, you can also consider more thoughts because, he's really pumping that on his Patreon.
Well, I mean, everyone in the Constitution, is guaranteed life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And part of that is these are fundamental human rights. Part of that is electing who represents you. The Congress shall be of the people, right? So the House of Representatives, right? So yeah, he's going to be right on that. There's no question he's going to be right. People ask me when I'm coming back. I'm coming back on Friday. I won't make the march on Saturday because I need to stop in with Peter Duke. But I will be back in the DC area on Saturday, and I'll probably cover some of the marches and activities at the end of the day from the Stop the Steal protests that are going to be happening in Washington. Let's see,
Let's meet up, George.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely interview you at the end of the day, Addie, for just if you're going to be talking to folks down there.
I'm going to be taking the overnighter hooked up by.
We'll talk about how.
Yeah,
to get
we'll figure it out.
There. I mean, who knows,
Oh wow,
man?
yeah, we're still figuring it out. But Saturday noon is the march or the rally, however you want to describe it, of people really protesting the calling of this election for Biden. I think is the most maybe general and accurate way to describe it. But lots of people in the independent media will be there, as well as, of course, the mainstreamers. I'm sure will catch up to us at some point.
I'd like to, if I could, even take this time to give you a quick window into my life, just because I think it helps everyone. Sorry to, I don't want to hog the mic, but my family here in Michigan, as maybe one of the representative super dads of the Osprey Nation. So we got it dropped on us yesterday that school, which we had been so appreciative and happy to have school back in session this fall, that school just kablam is not in session anymore. No school for the kids indefinitely, presumably through Christmas. They gave us about 24 hours notice that all the kids don't go to school anymore. Virtual school seems pretty crazy. I don't know how many people have kids and other things, and I just thought people might be appreciative to understand, what real Americans are dealing with as they try to work and deal with their day. That just, I mean, as a parent, you really build your life around putting the kids in school, getting them on the school bus, creating your work day and other things around that. And so for that to just come and go so haphazard is like, whoa, right? But whatever, we make lemons out of lemonade. Addie Ads wants to go to a march in DC. Maybe we're just going to drive, dude. Like, we'll see. But we'll take care of Addie here. So.
Yeah, if the kids have never seen DC, they should come down. And you can
We'll see.
This is my guy.
Definitely, like, we're just still calibrating. We got to get them on their Chromebooks. They're all there on their Chromebooks right now. School only occurs on the Google Chromebook, everybody. Free Chromebooks for the children.
Florida is calling them and you and Epcot Center in Orlando. So I want to say Jennifer Jensen asked about lawsuits. I've already filed my lawsuit against CNN, Donnie O'Sullivan, and CNN, Brian Seltzer, Poppy Harlow, and Jim Sciutto. So that's separate. That's something I did before the election fraud. The YouTube lawsuit, which like an Ann Vandersteel would be a party to, and anyone else like a McDuff would be a party to, and anyone else wants to join in that class action, is a separate lawsuit that we're gathering basically. We're gathering affidavits, or we're gathering evidence of channels that have been destroyed. We're not going down the terms of service fork, the contract fork. We're going down the tort fork, which is, you can say, in my contract, you can say, I can beat you up any day I want and hit you over the head. Well, if it violates a state law or federal law, you can't do that. You can put on the back of a matchbook, not responsible for any crimes committed and then walk around with the matchbook in your pocket. That doesn't mean anything. So we're not going to walk into the gunfire there. And the election fraud is when you file an amicus brief, you want to give new information to the court, which requires you reading every affidavit. Okay. And so we will be filing an amicus brief. We need to do a differential analysis between what was filed in the 237 affidavits and what was filed in the Trump lawsuit, the True North lawsuit, which is about 36 or 37. And that may be a huge value in and of itself. But then we have other information about intelligence, foreign intelligence tampering that happened last time. We have Hunter Biden. We have a witness, if you remember, saying Hunter Biden used these encrypted Blackberries, or the Bidens used these encrypted Blackberries. And we have another witness now supporting that, Bobby Linsky, that's saying he's running all around. Again, with this same Kolomoisky, contacting Kolomoisky, this same guy that Rudy Giuliani seems to want to set up a whole bunch of meetings with. Somebody said I looked frustrated and angry. I could not be further from that. I'm elated today that someone finally filed the lawsuit that we have been talking about. There's no sense running around, Addy Ads running around, knocking on the window of Channel 7 saying, when are you guys going to pour yourself a cup of courage? There's no reason to have him running around, and Aaron Adler, the morning of, I think it was even before the sun came up. Remember, this didn't happen at 3:45 a.m. Aaron Adler, as the sun's peaking at 6:45 a.m., less than 3 hours later, is saying this, let's get to the TCF. It's going to be at the TCF. So
are you able to play any of our previous content right now?
Yeah.
Hit our election night coverage, would you please? Go to our election night coverage. I've been asking these guys to clip this, but everybody's busy here. There's a big laundry list of things to get to. Another thing that I'll bite my tongue on, if it's too far into the weeds, George, I just we got to keep our eyes on the big guy and the Belt and Road and everything, because I think we're a really advanced group on that in a research context, and I've been studying it a lot in my spare time.
The shadow banning is so real.
What, you can't find us? Neighborhood News Studio?
No, it's just
do Neighborhood News Studio.
Well, it's just difficult to find. Is my point.
Sure. Yeah, they don't want us to be found. It's okay. Just do the channel itself. Take election night out. But yeah, the just so much of the Belt and Road stuff and the Caspian Sea, and maybe give me a few minutes at the end of our show here to ask you some questions. I don't want to get us off the election stuff, although I think we're all going to find the Belt and Road players are also the Crossfire Hurricane players, which is what sparked our interest long way back when, right?
But they're also the Crossfire Ferrari players. That's the part I don't want people to miss here.
The Crossfire Ferrari.
Yeah, I'm totally serious. The Hurricane players are the same people that are the Crossfire Ferrari guys. That's the key, right? If you get that encrypted communications are used to throw these elections, then you nailed it. You figured it out. You win. You get the answer to the test. These same encrypted communications that were used to throw the 2016 election with the Russians and Warren Flood are going to be the same group of people in 2020.
Okay, Aaron really wants to show us something. I'm going to put it on the channel later, but let me just find it here. We'll
look at that as we go. I mean, are we able to transition to just so much you've taught us about why slanted drilling, why mini modular reactors, and just the overwhelming motivation of why these nations and these people and these players would want that and need to do that so urgently? Can we talk about that?
Sure.
Move us away from the election a little. I'm sorry.
I think the election. I think they're the same thing.
I know they are, but we're the only ones who know they are. Did we freeze?
Okay.
Did you want me to show the video? Or?
Well, we're gonna have to find it. Looks like we clipped an hour off it, so I'm gonna have to go back to where I thought I could find it.
Okay.
I want to talk about just that.
I'll post it later today.
Yeah, we can look for it later. So the Caspian Sea, right? So we have 5 nations bordering the Caspian Sea, particularly, right? And the Caspian Sea is largest. Yeah, there's Caspian Sea, largest freshwater, although it's like a third salinated of normal seawater in the bottom region. It's freshwater in the northern region, right? And we've got this Baku. We've learned so much about the Baku from George and John, right? Even going all the way back to this guy Golanowski, who's testifying against Kissinger back in the 60s or 70s. And he thinks he's like a Romanov descendant and has a claim to the Baku, right? But like, so we have these 5 nations surrounding this very incredible natural resource. And beyond the freshwater, below, down in the seabed is all of the amazingness, right? The liquid natural gas, the just everything, right? Am I missing anything so far, George?
No.
Oil. And there's all these international disputes going way back since the end of the Soviet Union, in terms of, are we going to classify it as a sea? If it's classified as a sea, then there's these United Nations laws of maritime yip yap, which apply, even though really, when you look at the salination levels and the freshwater levels, it probably is more classified a lake because it's all inland and everything else. But like, there's, so there's the freshwater component, which has a lot of different, international treaties or deals and dealings going on. And then there's, of course, the minerals and then the LNG under there. And so under this lake in the seabed, right, and they're having a real hard time divvying up the seabed. Even now, today, it's really kind of unclear who gets the seabed, how far into the seabed they get, and like, but there is a bunch of LNG under there. So why slanted drilling? Well, if I'm Iran and I can slant this thing, it's just how far can I slant, because there's some good stuff under there and somebody's going to get it and the clock's ticking. And there's 5 different players all around the Caspian and they want this oil field, and they got to slant and slant and slant. And it takes a lot of power to slant those pipes into that deposit. And certainly a modular reactor would be really good at doing that. And especially your enemies or competitors would have a harder time identifying that you were slanting into this LNG deposit, rather than a huge diesel oil powered or diesel fuel powered, contraption that gets at it. So of course you're going to need to do this clandestine because there's, whatever, right? But like, duh, of course these guys want this stuff. These guys, like, the way you're gonna get the Baku oil is through modular reactors and slanted drilling. You try to do it another way and you're in big trouble. Am I missing anything? Well,
can I just
your turn. Sorry.
We've been no, it's great. Ever since ever since we've learned of Peter Strzok, we immediately looked at Peter Strzok Sr. and his working with the 5 tribes that surround this area, right? We immediately, we did, and the Tajiks and the and we immediately said they were going to do a strategy of conflict in all the other places where the oil wasn't being extracted. When you're trying not to get shot by a sniper, it's hard to pump oil, and that out of Iran, this was going to be the pumping station for this Belt and Road. So we didn't realize how correct we were, how right on we were with the encrypted Blackberries, the NATO Blackberries, the State Department Blackberries. And we didn't realize that it was going to be Hunter Biden being put in this situation by the Strzucks of the world, to be the kind of the patsy for this. But now we do know that. And that's why it is so important to talk about Peter Strzok and how Hunter Biden was used as a patsy, because just getting Biden taken down as president isn't going to really help it's going to mean Kamala Harris is your new president, which is basically a stand-in for Hillary, somebody who can, you know, do the legwork for appearances instead of Hillary, just like Hillary was sort of the stand-in for Madeleine Albright. So that isn't what we want. We want to expose Strzok and the dark hand behind this Baku. This goes back to John and Macduff with Golanowski. As you said, this was the reason why you want to have, whether he's the last Romanov or not, it doesn't matter. As long as they can affect the claims of the last Romanov, that's all that we care about. And we're allowed to pump it dry because we have the last claim of the Romanovs, right? And that's why we're pumping it dry. And that's Peter Strzok.
But now let's move to your recent work here in the Great Lakes region and where we're at, you know. And when you take what the Caspian is and the resource, the Great Lakes resource compared to the Caspian resource, it is like, of course, the Caspian, you know, if you've got a bunch of rogue dudes or dudettes fighting over Caspian resources, but you want to bring them somewhere less hostile to show them what they can do with the Caspian resource. Well, the Great Lakes is the most common probably comparison you could make in terms of a, you know, water lake resource with LNG and all sorts of piping and historical things. So like for you to say that they're bringing these Caspian region players over here to do stuff with them in Ohio for the purpose of this bigger picture of, you know, selling the technology, you know, it's all military industrial complex, right? I mean, you got to make your sales. So it's starting to all make sense. You know, I'm sorry to just like hog all of this for my learning time, but I guess I'm not that sorry. I'm learning a lot from you, man. I'm learning a lot from the team, McDuff University. So.
Well, you Aaron, you were right there with us where we were falling all over these pipelines. I mean, literally, Addie and I and we all the gang that came there were literally falling over the pipeline. You know, Andy was talking about how he can't take a bike ride without bumping, you know, having a huge bump because there's this huge pipeline that they're putting in this feeder along this old right-of-way. Mark Buckley was talking about how that was the old I can't remember, the old train right-of-way where Hunter Biden's friend, Bevan Cooney, who's now in jail, is buying the right-of-ways. We're all looking out there at the Muslim shrine, you know, the temple out there where there's nobody. It looks like small reactor city. There's nothing out there. You've driven by it 1,000 times. There's nothing out there. It's almost like that little mausoleum that they have on Epstein's Island, which is where they had another little reactor doing fracking. It's like, it's so obvious. They go so overboard, and it's right on the pipeline. And then we look at all the rights of way where Bevan Cooney was buying, and we just say, of course they're bringing the Russian kids here. They're learning the game, and then they're going back there and doing the game back there. So, yes.
Well, and yeah, I guess if I can indulge my learning session here. So like, as we even dive into each nation, we've got Iran now. Let's start at the bottom with Iran. And we've got all these Iran nuclear deal players, as you've indicated. Hey, it's going to be the Iran nuclear deal players, right? I mean, Iran, you know, and we're over here thinking, oh, you know, death to America, death to Israel, as if they, you know, want a weapons program. And no doubt there's probably a component of a weapons program. But I'll bet Iran really wants that Baku oil. And they got a slant. You know, I mean, look at the map. You know, you're in Tehran. I mean, how many miles is it? I haven't even had time to study too far, but like, can't be all that far for Iran to slant into that Baku. And so they really do probably want some of these rods for that purpose, just as much as, you know, bombing Israel or whatever we all are getting all goofed up about all the time, right? So that, as I look at that and the players and the technology and the Nowruz, the Nowruz dancers, it's like, these guys really probably would want to go slant, have a little super battery slant right into the Baku, you know? So that's the first one that's like, wow, you know, that's curious. Yeah.
So the reason why it is going to be Kissinger, and the reason why it does go back to Peter Strzok Sr. is this goes back to the Iran-Contra. All the same players, Bob McFarlane and all these same players, Cofer Black, all these same players of, hey, we'll have Iran drain the Caspian to feed China. All the people that thought this up, it was 30 years ago, right? The whole idea of using the small reactors for fracking goes back 50 years. So nothing is new here with Strzok, the Strzoks and building a road of a Belt and Road to China, right? There's nothing new here. This is why they want to win this election, and they're willing to win 100 million to 1 to do it. Trump didn't say he thought the score should have been 100 million to 1 or to 0 if he didn't have the technology to make it 100 million to 0. And now we're seeing that he does have the technology to make it 100 million to 0. And the sooner we figure out that he maintains his connections with Canadian intelligence and is using that as a portal into places like Sault Ste. Marie and Mackinac Island and Warren Flood in Cobo Hall in TCF Center, when we figure out that he still can affect elections through foreign intelligence operations, we're all going to be a lot smarter.
Don't forget Minnesota. Don't forget Minnesota and Seattle.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
And he has Ukrainian connections as well. So I feel bad for Bevan Cooney. Connie's asking, why is he in jail? He's the dumb guy whose father was an oil and gas and mineral expert who probably did all the analysis for the Toledo area and said, hey, this is going to be a fracking. This is going to be better than Piketon, Ohio with the Buckeye Express. This is going to be the Trans-Ohioan Express, right? I can't remember what they call it. Marathon. I can't remember the name Marathon gave it. But then you always screw the guy who's the nice guy at the end. You always stick it to the guy who's the patsy. And he is the patsy. But they gave him the Oconus lure. They gave him the beautiful blonde wife with the high cheekbones and all that. He saw some action there, driving around his Ferrari for a while, for a couple of years, and then they laid it on him. And he was the guy carrying around the BlackBerry. And so was Hunter Biden. And so was Bob Ulinsky. So it's going to come out. And one of the partners in this, Dominion Energy and Dominion voting system. First of all, don't trust any voting system that Warren Buffett owns, okay, and George Soros. But the second thing is Jack Abramoff is also a poor partner in voting systems. Right. So when they get into this, and I don't know why Rudy again didn't go right at this. When they get into this, they're going to see this is just a litany of criminals with long criminal records.
I wonder if Rudy hung out at Habonim Drawer summer camps with Stanley Fisher. That's, I'll bet they were active. I mean, we don't need to replay the Habonim Drawer drama camp cabal that, Seth Rich with his drama camps and Borat, Sacha Baron Cohen at the drama camps. And I'm sure, Rudy is very, he's a great actor. He's good at playing any role they need to put him in, man. Or maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe he's only good at one role, actually. Rudy's only good at being the rhino dunce.
Yeah. I think we have a lot of evidence. I would like to see somebody at the Trump camp actually reach out to us, so we're not on the outside looking in through amicus briefs, and we're on the inside, that we can file an amended pleading or another affidavit, if you will, under the auspices of the lawsuit.
Did you see the Project Veritas release of the interview with the USPS employee? It's this guy who I guess is a former Marine, and he received instructions from his supervisor, I think, to change the date on ballots. And he got interviewed by the head of the USPS, and he posted the whole interrogation on his website. But really, just classical conniving federals, trying to coerce somebody into saying they did something illegal, and then I guess he was trying to also just basically tell him to lie. And he also said, "I'm not trying to scare you, but I am trying to scare you." This is, I think, the USPS general inspector. So I don't know, very interesting stuff coming out of there that I noticed as well.
Well, this is why we need to
you
get
guys are talking about Iran and all this, but
Let's go.
Yeah, no.
Into that, you're going to be my expert on my next question.
okay. Well, I won't let George respond.
let me follow up on that. This is why that's one example of one guy, right? If one person says it, okay, that's a charge. If two people say it, it's like, whoa, that's got a ring to it. Three people say it, it's like, wow, it's probably true. 12 people say it, it's like, oh my God, this happened, right?
Yeah, because for everyone that says it, there's probably at least two that don't say anything, right? Or at least one,
This is why we need to fill the skies with sleeping bags of whistleblowers at the neighborhood news studio there. And if we run out of room there, then we have to go to an outdoor location in a warm place. But I'm looking at Florida. If we have more than 18 whistleblowers come down to the studio, and if we have to have a field for 500 people, we'll have a field for 500. But anybody who wants to, we need to show. Peter Duke taught me a lot, right? He says you have to actually bring the story on a plate of dog food, right, to the reporter. Let the reporter spin the story however they want. Okay, don't try to fill in the headline for the reporter, but provide all the information in one place. Let's provide all 18 people that they can come to the Neighborhood News Hour and interview all 18 people, right, and get the story for themselves and try this case, because it's going to be important. You want to try this case in the court of public opinion simultaneously to what's happening behind closed doors.
Yeah. It's the only way to get anything done, I think, in this country anymore. It's like with the Epstein thing, it was just so suppressed for so long, just showing the court of public opinion. I guess a great example of that, but they eventually had to say something about it, and Aaron was mentioning the state of Georgia actually yesterday. You want to talk about that, Aaron?
I think if we could chat a little at the end of the show, George, off air, I got some charrette ideas for, continued news hour charrette awesomeness, but we got a lot of planning to do in that regard. I wanted to ask, so it's never too late for affidavits. Once a lawsuit's filed, more people can then pile on affidavits after the fact, right? That's even probably a common thing I would expect, right?
Yeah, the more the merrier. I see somebody saying, careful with this guy, he's a social engineer. Warren Flood isn't a social engineer. So I would put that down, because Warren Flood's not the social engineer. We all need to go after George Webb. Warren Flood's not a social engineer when I alter millions of votes in a key swing state. That's there. I'm the guy that Eddie has to worry about, not
Watch
Warren.
this. Watch this, because I, with the Mossad uranium card this morning, continue to try to coerce Addie. So here's Addie's daily bag of burritos, right? We bring Addie a bag of burritos to be sure that he's happy and gets what he wants. So yes, social engineering all the way. We know about his how he likes burritos, and we make sure that he is
they're not from Mexico. George has the best burritos available to him probably in most of the world there in Mexico. But very appreciative to Aaron for making sure I don't die of starvation.
That is a real bag of burritos. So I think George took a little break on us, but I wanted to. So we were talking about the Caspian, and we were moving around discussing the different countries of the Caspian there. And the next one up from Iran is Azerbaijan, which is right where the Baku is and everything. And you yourself, I'm really not familiar. I haven't been able to keep up, but you've been talking, I believe, with Shrimp and others about this Nagorno-Karabakh war going on in Azerbaijan, which no doubt is just another thing. I mean, it's just, this region is like, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's like a never ending. There's never a time where there's no conflict. So can you tell us a little what you know about Nagorno-Karabakh, if I'm saying
Sure. Yeah, Nagorno-Karabakh is the disputed region between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and I will actually pull up a map of it here. I think it's quite important to look at the geography of it.
Geography explains so much, it's amazing.
But Azerbaijan is backed by Turkey, and many I have read, reports of likely or possible or probable. I wasn't sure what the verbiage used was, but NATO weapons being funneled to Azerbaijan via Turkey, who I don't know if they're full NATO members or just like sister, whatever the designation is, so they don't have to like audit them as much. Basically, there's people talking about the weapons getting fueled, American weapons, to Azerbaijan via Turkey through that NATO spot, but there's Nagorno-Karabakh there in the dark.
How would these guys find the time to like infiltrate elections and do topples of nations and regions all at the same time? It's incredible.
Well, yeah, it's concentrated forces. But I want to ask if and how this ties into the stuff going on this side of the world to George at the end here. But there's territory of Azerbaijan under the control of Armenian military forces, and this map is not current as far as I know. But I actually haven't been up to date on this recently, like the last week or so, just because I've been in full election mode. Sure. But there was a ceasefire briefly, but just as far as the demographics of the two countries, Armenia is mostly Christian, and Azerbaijan is mostly Muslim. I think they are Sunni Muslim, if I remember correctly. And let me just double check that. But Azerbaijan about 3 times the size of Armenia population wise. They also have much more fertile land. Yeah, so 96% Islamic. Azerbaijani.
Pretty sure the ceasefire did not hold. I remember hearing like yesterday that there was more hot fire and fatalities in that region. So
okay, yeah, I'm not surprised. But yeah, so you have a mostly Muslim country versus a mostly Christian country, and they're also ethnically they're more or less ethno states as well. The Armenians and Azerbaijanis. Not many people who in the country who aren't Christian if they're in Armenia, or aren't Muslim if they're in Azerbaijan as well. So very kind of like 91% there. Sure. Azerbaijani, and then likewise with Armenia, I think it's even higher. So,
well, I mean, we could take an entire college course on the Caspian region, and the other countries would be Russia, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan, or is it Tajikistan? I think it's Tajik, not Turkmenistan.
Oh, there it is.
We're on the other side of the Caspian, but it's just, George, I'm just so grateful because, like, you got to do your own research. George doesn't tell you everything. You got to then research and dive into it and study more. And it's like, you're telling us about the slanted drilling and the modular reactors. And it just, the geography is so compelling as to proving that out and why it would be the truth. So thank you, George.
Yeah. So how does this tie into the West, George, if at all?
Wherever you see bullets flying, that's where underneath is the drilling. Okay. And you also have, groups being fomented in both countries for a constant conflict, strategy of conflict. It's impossible when you're fighting in an army to also be drilling. And if you look at the Iranian side, it's relatively peaceful. The stuff that the Strucks put in, if you go down to the south a little bit, and the sort of the small nuke reactors for the fracking, that's peaceful. We think of Iran, with all the protests and all this, but they're not shooting at each other. This is the strategy of tension. Goes all the way back to it does go back to the Romanovs with the Rockefellers.
When were the 5 billion barrels discovered in the Baku?
Right around, oil was a nuisance until 1900, right? And then the whole reason for the Russian Revolution, the White Russian versus Red Russia, which was going to split the country, right? Was to pull away this area, all right, that under White Russian control. And what happened was it got out of control. The Red Revolution got out of control and took this over. So, with Stalin and so forth. So that's I can't remember. There was a couple of different revolutions in there. So in Ukraine, right, it's been, these forces have been building up. The White Russians, all go to Ukraine, right? It's been building up since 1917, right. 1918, 1919, okay? Ever since we knew that oil was going to be a strategic resource, right? When you then learn that you can use uranium to frack in the late 50s, then that becomes your Reese's Pieces, right? Or your Reese's peanut butter cup. You got peanut butter in my chocolate. You got uranium. You got yellow cake in my oil. Those two work together in terms of fracking. So that's where we have to look at the same people that want another 2 payouts of $150 billion is the Strucks. The Strucks lead this group, lead this consortium. Okay. We have to realize that the people that are trying to do the election tampering are the ones that benefit the most from the election. And that's 2 more $150 billion chunks, plus $20 trillion in the Belt and Road from Iran to China. $20 trillion, fully loaded, $20 trillion. So
we have
going to be the answer to the test.
We have multiple hostile actors all urgently trying to drain this LNG, oil field. And every day there's, fewer barrels than there were yesterday. And so you're saying Iran is trying to destabilize this region to distract Azerbaijan from being able to drill as effectively, or
no? Struck in the CIA. Remember, Warren Buffett
Iran is their proxy.
Is the big partner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Warren Buffett and Kissinger are the big KKR. They're the big partners in the Belt and Road. Now it's disguised to you as Rosneft and the Russians, but Hunter Biden wouldn't be in Russia with Rosneft and Sechin, right? And getting 10% of the deal. If they weren't getting 10% of the deal, they're getting 10% of the deal. And of course they hang it on Trump and use it as a lure against Trump because it's their 10%. They don't want their 10% being associated with them. They want their 10% being associated with Trump and Carter Page.
That's what brings it to the West.
Yeah.
I think, it's a long way to get here, but it's a long flight from the Caspian to New York, right?
So we'll be meeting up on Saturday, George, hopefully in the Washington, D.C. area on the evening there. I don't know. We can talk off air about details, of course, but I'm going to D.C. by hook or by crook, folks. And if anybody wants to make an entropy chat, super chat, you can be our second ever, or I say mine. It's my channel. I want to make that clear. Second ever donation on the super chat, and of course that benefits the neighborhood news studio at large. But we will.
You're the chief. You're the engine of the train. Well, I don't know. I guess we got 2. There's a lot of engines.
We will be updating updating the neighborhood news studio Patreon as well with levels like we had going with the memberships. And I might do something similar on mine as well. Or I might just send a sweatshirt to people who are on a certain donation level, and then if they want to give more or less, they can. But we'll be in DC for the March rally thing on Saturday, and then tonight and Vandersteel at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
10. We're going that late.
10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And George will be joining us as well. You have any final thoughts, George, before we sign off on our high noon broadcast?
Well, I want to say that there's a speech that Jimmy Stewart makes in It's a Wonderful Life where everyone's crowding around the owner of the building and loan, George Bailey, wanting their money. And he goes, "You're thinking about this place all wrong. Your money isn't here. It's in Mr. Vanderway's house, Vandersteel's house over there, and Mr. Webb's house over there, and it's in Mr. McDuff's house over there, right? Neighborhood news isn't in one place. There's a headquarters clubhouse where we all come to meet every once in a while, where we shelter whistleblowers in the thousands, right? Bring your sleeping bag. But it isn't in one place. It's all over. And that's what makes it so hard to beat. That's what makes it redundant and fault tolerant. The same strategy that the US government used to survive nuclear attacks. We don't want everybody to be there in one place. We want people to go out and cover stories. We want to come together and have a clubhouse to come together, but we also want to be able to provide shelter for whistleblowers when the time is right to take their depositions. So we need to be out doing stories. Okay, I need to be interviewing helicopter experts on 7 different aircraft carriers for 30 years, right? You don't find those stories necessarily back at the headquarters. So I'll just leave it there. And I think it's funny that other channels would send people here to accuse me of being a social engineer when we're looking at the biggest social engineering operation ever in the history of our country, which is to invalidate our election. When that same person has pixelated the key tool that these people are using to socially engineer our election.
I wonder if we've got an exciting interview tonight, in neighborhood news. You're all in the neighborhood, you in the chat, everyone, who's in a neighborhood and is a patriot. And we're meeting the beautiful Ann Vandersteel tonight. And we've been making some alternative accounts, preparing in case, channels get chopped and stuff like that. And we do have neighborhood news girls. I wonder if Ann Vandersteel would be able to be our first correspondent, or if somehow we can, team up, because she's so such an inspiration. So, we won't have to use that. We won't have to use that email, hopefully, as long as the studio stays up. But we've got backups, various backups, a lot of,
Yeah, I'm gonna try to meet up with Ann this weekend as well, and hopefully George gets there soon enough too, depending on his travel logistics. But great idea here from Connie Bevan, Charette, to learn how to create more neighborhood news hour home studios. I think that's a fantastic idea. I think we could do maybe a video series on that too, if there's interest for it, demand for it. We could definitely do that.
Ann's flying to DC from Nevada.
Is that where she lives?
She's in Nevada, where she was, but if you're saying you're meeting up with her in DC, wow, she's going for it.
Hopefully. I mean, we haven't set up a plan, but we're all going to the same spot, so more or less I'm sure we're going to see her and everybody else there. People I don't want to get accused of name dropping. So names you would imagine would be there will be there more than likely. So including the man with the green eyes and the green shirt here in Mexico. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to our High Noon broadcast with George Webb, Deep Journo, and the super Energizer Bunny, Aaron Adler. This is Addy Ads, Anakin Skywalker, YouTube's chosen one. We'll see you all this evening at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Ann Vandersteel. Be looking on my Twitter and George's for updates or changes to that scheduling as well. Until next time, folks, stay frosty.